not going to be here. So, yeah, ate something last night that did not agree with him. All right, folks, if you allow me, let's go ahead and get started. Let me start off telling you who I am. My name is Gene Jones. I'm executive director for a nonprofit called CanEd. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I set up CanEd as an educational portal to conduct conferences in the cannabis sector. The main hat I wear day in and day out is assisting industry here in the state of Florida with waste issues, recycling, waste management. We run a nonprofit organization called the Southern Waste Information Exchange. And through that portal, we do conferences in the environmental sector, which is kind of how this all spun off in doing conferences in the cannabis sector, because I use those same templates to do what we're doing now. If you allow me, I want to make a couple of quick opening remarks. First off, if everybody could silence their phones. Proceedings, everything that you are going to see throughout the course of the event will be put together in a PDF component and emailed out to everybody, along with the video that we are capturing through Zoom right now. We welcome our virtual attendees to the conference. That's probably one of the good things that has come out of COVID. After doing now almost 12 events post-COVID, one of the advantages of what we learned out of that was the video aspect of it. And we've learned lessons the hard way. I can't promise you something won't go wrong in the course of bringing in some of our presenters virtually, but I will promise you that we will try to correct it. List of participants, I will include that along with the proceedings. Typically, we just do names and affiliations. The sponsors and exhibitors and virtual or VIP attendees will get the full contact list. So this is your chance to opt out. If you don't want your contact information released, please let me know. Bathrooms are down the hall by the escalators around the corner. Handout table, we've got handout table in the back of the exhibit hall, so if anybody has anything they want to hand out, you're welcome to use that. Receptions, breaks, lunch, well, let me start off. Reception and breaks are going to be in the exhibit hall. Lunch today is going to be in Grand Ballroom A. A little bit of a walk, you go down the hall towards the front of the hotel, and it'll be on the right-hand side. Top Golf, we have a Top Golf event tonight. We still have, I think, 5 or 6 tickets open, so if anybody wants to join us, we're going to open that up to all attendees. And then lastly, social media pages. We've got a LinkedIn page for the conference as well as a Facebook group, so I'd encourage you to join that. Conference would not be possible without our sponsors. Big shout out to Catherine Zito with Cannabis Business Solutions. She took the painstaking effort to work with me in the development of the website, as well as in guidance serving on the steering committee. Our gold sponsors, Age Vital Wellness, Watson Strategies. Ron Watson, for those of you that may or may not know him, he's the one who actually got me to do this first conference, because it was that young man through what he went through in losing his son at 7 years old through leukemia. And at that point, he made the commitment that he's going to lobby for medical marijuana here in the state of Florida. So he was one of the ones behind that. Florida Hemp Council and Florida Industrial Hemp Company, which is something I started. I haven't actually launched like Cole and Adam, you heard yesterday, talking about the shelf and the stores that they operate. This is something that I probably will do down the road. I want to focus on industrial hemp products, not CBD market. By the way, in your packets is a small sample of industrial hemp. It's not to be smoked, it's a sample. It's Florida-based hemp, and I know there's a couple of you in the room who are saying, too late. So it's not, doesn't have Delta 8 on it, and you're going to hear a lot about that later on. It's just Florida hemp, so it's a kind of a souvenir. Our silver sponsors, Hemp for Water, Native Hemp Solutions, and then the 2 other conferences we run, Greens Reserve, who should be here later on, Jeff Green should be here later on, and then Southern Waste Information Exchange. And then our media partners, Cannabis News of Florida, Charles Felix, thank you, Charles, for all you do. National Hemp Association, thank you, sir. And then all of all of our other sponsors that have helped get the word out. Jody James with Florida Can. We've got Canna Moms. We've got some great activists in the industry that help get the word out about the event. Quick closing. We've got 2 other events coming up. June 3rd through the 5th, we've got the Florida Medical Cannabis Conference. It's going to be here. And then this is a new one that we're starting, also going to be here. This is an idea from Dr. Jeff Conan, who spoke last year at our Florida Medical Cannabis Conference. This gentleman is highly involved in the sports arena, represents several universities. I'm not at liberty to tell you which one they are, that represents NCAA big league football programs to consult with student athletes about cannabis. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Holly Bell and let you run with it. And I'm not even going to announce. I'm going to let you tell everybody about the changes in terms of what is going on with you, ma'am. So I'll turn it over to you, and I shall be back.
Thank you, Gene. Thanks, everybody, and thanks to our virtual attendees. So I'm Holly Bell, and most of you know and have worked with me over the last 3.5 years as the Director of Cannabis for Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. It was a fabulous opportunity and appointment by the Commissioner of Agriculture, Nikki Fried, and I got to work with great people like Brian Benson, Trevor, Jerry, Zach, a bunch of you. But last Friday was my last day, and I went back out into the private sector. And a lot of people have asked me, oh my gosh, who's going to replace you? What's going to happen? And at this point, it doesn't look like they're going to replace me, but the one beautiful thing you've got to remember is I went to work with a team at FIHCE that was amazing. And they have 4,000 employees, $3 billion budget at FIHCE, in multiple divisions, and we set the hemp program up to run even if somebody like me is not there. And so Trevor and Brian run the cultivation piece at DPI. Dr. Curran, who will speak with me later today, runs the food safety piece, which picks up everything after cultivation and takes it all the way to retail. And that's our food safety group. And then Kelly Friend is the AES director. She covers all your pesticides, fertilizers, seeds, and pet food. So they're all very tenured regulators, more so than me. So you're left in great hands. And we can give you all the emails to get in touch with all those people as things move forward. So that's kind of a quick update on me, but the program itself, that's why we're here today, to answer any of your questions, help you understand where Florida's headed with their program. And as of Friday, not much, to my knowledge, was going to change. Do you guys think? We've got our rules done. The program's set in place. We currently have over 750 cultivation permits out. We have well over 9,000 food safety hemp permits out now. So the program is growing. We're adding about 30 to 40 permits per week when I left, and that pace had not slowed down since the first of the year. They're predominantly on the food safety side, but the cultivation permits have been holding strong at 750 for 2 years now, right at that. And Brian, how many acres? It's about 20,000 acres that are permitted to grow and cultivate in the state. So sadly, we don't have that amount growing right now. And research at UF and other universities, genetics, some things that my colleagues will talk about today will help Florida move the program along, and maybe some changes in the upcoming Farm Bill. What I was seeing right before I left was a lot of infrastructure coming into Florida for the fiber side. And up in Gadsden County, I saw one, and then down at Fort Pierce, and then there are some also throughout the state. I know Steve is working on that also, Steve Edmonds. So that, I believe, is our next wave in the state of Florida, is you're going to see larger tracts grown for fiber, for various uses. We just have to get the genetics right. Is anybody here growing for fiber right now? How's that going?
It's probably about this tall right now. It's growing pretty good this year.
How long has it been in the ground?
About 2 weeks.
Okay, then that's good.
Exactly where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, so we're good. What part of Florida are you growing in?
Lake City, Columbia County.
Okay, so you're north in zone, is that still zone 8 or zone 7? For growing, it's zone 8, isn't it?
We're right in where I-10 is 75.
Okay, yep, in the Swanee Valley. Beautiful place to grow it because you grew tobacco there too, and there seems to be. Now, do you have an end game for your product?
We're still working that towards the end game.
Hang on one sec. I want to capture this on video. I mean, on the recording.
I'm sorry. My name is Ellsworth McGuire. I own and operate Rents McGuire Acres out of Columbia County, Lake City, Florida. We did grow hemp last year. Well, we attempted to grow it last year. And the strain that we tried to use last year, it flowered on us really fast. Because we tried to plant in April, and it flowered. So we cut that up, and then we tried to grow it again, but then it started raining in North Florida, and the plants was probably at the same stage they are now when it started raining in June, and it just washed the field out. So it was a wash last year. So this year we waited until May. Again, I have pictures of the plants. I took pictures of the field yesterday before I left. And so we're praying that it'll work out this year. But again, our company, we already own our own decorticator, and we have our own the combing machine also. We've ordered them and purchased them and had them shipped in from China. So we have that on site also. So we're going to grow it. We're going to harvest it, and we're going to, strip it and comb it and everything. And what we need is the end user that which we will sell the fiber. And then this fine gentleman right in front of me just told me he's looking for herd. So the end game is to be able to do all of that. So if anybody, again, I'm welcome. I welcome
That's excellent.
To talk to you.
That's excellent to hear.
And this is my wife Heather, and this is my cousin Teresa. They are business partners of ours, and my other business partner Akil will be here tomorrow.
Excellent. That's great. See, the infrastructure is coming. I mean, and when we look around, I tell everybody, I don't have my hemp dress on today, but anything in this room could be made from hemp. So, and it's so much better for the environment and reduces our carbon footprint. So just take a couple more minutes. Did everybody see the news last night on the Ninth Circuit Court's ruling on Delta 8? So it is exactly what my team and I said, and many others in the industry, the Hemp Association said would happen, and that is they said it's illegal. And if the federal government didn't intend to make it legal, then they need to go back and change the Farm Bill. And one of the things that I learned coming in as a regulator, because I'd come from the private industry, is how to read statute. That's really important. And when we really broke the statute down, and what I didn't understand as just a person with no experience in the elected process, it is word for word that you have to take literally, unlike most things in life. So we were convinced if we got in a court of law, we'd get a ruling just like they did yesterday. So the brilliant team that I worked with was right, and many other experts in the industry. So anybody have any questions on that? So the ruling was that Delta 8 is legal, and it goes back in and it tells you how they defined what they approved of the Farm Bill and the wording, and so why that was the case, they ruled that way. So I will tell you too, in FDACS's history, we did town hall meetings when I was there, and we brought Sean Mitchell from the DEA and Bill Richmond from the USDA on to one town hall meeting, and we recorded it. It's still on our website. And Sean Mitchell took on the Delta 8 question back in June of last year and told the group on a recording that it is not a Schedule I drug, and the DEA does not consider it to be so. So that's the other reason we also knew that's where the courts would be heading, most likely. What other questions do you want to ask me about FDACS, or we have some other people in the audience that you might want to know? Anything we can help you with? No? You're such a lively group. Okay.
All right, hang on.
Oh, greetings. My name is Javon Bell. I go to Florida A&M University, and I'm a second year under agribusiness. And the question I have is, what tips would you suggest for starting a business like this in the hemp program or the cannabis industry and things in that nature?
I heard you ask this yesterday. You're a bright young man. Love to see you here. So I'm going to give you one piece of advice in this industry. Trust but verify. And when I say verify, I mean verify, verify, verify. Don't take just somebody's word for it. I would go find it in writing or call somebody like myself or Jeff or Brian that has been in the industry and say, I don't know how many calls I got at the state saying, so-and-so promised me to sell me his license, and I'm going to pay thousands of dollars for this. Could you just verify that it's a real license? And I would just say, okay, well, it's all out. Yeah, it's real, but it was free, so I don't think you need to pay for it. So there's a lot of people out there that will take advantage of honest people who are eager to start a business in this industry. So have your guard up just a little, okay? Don't be jaded, but do trust but verify, and go to people like the gentleman sitting in front of you who's already doing it. These guys over here that research it, anybody else that's doing it, go just talk to them, get their card, build a database of people that you think have been around and can give you some good advice. And then pick a niche. That's my second piece of advice. Any business you start, if you have a niche, you're gonna do okay.
Thank you.
Greetings, my name is Patrick Birch I'm a third-year agricultural science major from Mobile, Alabama. And my question is, I've been kind of into the hemp program, well, the hemp space my freshman year. And I know, I guess regarding Tallahassee, you can only have so many companies to grow hemp. And I also wanted to know how many acres would you need to be qualified to receive said licenses or said qualifications to actually start it up. And not only that, I know you said there's many acres that they're starting or they can allow to grow hemp, but I know you have to have, like I was saying earlier, you have to be one of, I guess, I know Tallahassee has 6 or 7 that can legally grow, but how do you see it in the future as more of us try to get into the industry, and how can we be allowed into the industry?
So great question. You're talking about 2 different programs. So we have 2 programs in the state of Florida. We have the medical marijuana, they call it, I prefer medical cannabis program, that's run by the OMMU, the Office of Medical Marijuana Use, under the Department of Health. And if you Google OMMU in Florida, it'll pull you up to their website, which is a funky name like knowthefacts.org or something. So that is a very defined, closed-knit system, and only 22 permits are issued. They've just opened it up for one more for people of the Pigford class action lawsuit that happened years ago. So we'll see who gets that license. After they grant that one, they're supposed to give out 18 to 22 more. So that is a system that's called vertical integration, meaning if you have the permit, you've got to do everything in that chain, and nobody else can do it for you. You've got to do it in-house. So that's a very closed loop system. On the hemp side, we welcome everybody to our table. We want everybody to join. You can do whatever you want in the industry. You can do a little piece of it. You can do a lot of it, like the gentleman in front of you. We don't care. Cultivation permits you apply for online through DPI. We ask that you go get your fingerprints done and pay for that. Other than that, the cultivation permit is free and it's annually renewable. And we do not limit you or limit the number of permits in Florida for hemp licenses. And there is no restriction on acreage, right, Brian? So you do have to be zoned agriculture or industrial to grow, okay? Would you guys raise your hand? So this is Brian Benson and Trevor Smith, the director and deputy director of Department of Plant Industry. And so Trevor is our SPRO. I'm sure he gets tired of me saying that. State Pest Regulatory Officer. So he stops all bugs from entering our state. And so those ag inspection stations that you see on the interstates, it's because they're checking for bugs, for produce, for things that are going to contaminate our ecosystem in Florida. And it's serious, isn't it, Trevor? The stuff they find in 3.5 years, I would walk out of Monday meetings going, wow. So the snail eradication was the best story. Anything else before I move on?
Last question, if we could, and I want to get Jeff to.
When we had the hemp inspector to come out, he was saying that they were trying to increase the level of tolerance from the 0.003. Is that going anywhere? And is there any consideration of it being a different tolerance for fiber than for CBD?
What a great transition to my colleague. I'm going to let him address that. And he has answers for you. Thank you so much. I'll be around all day if you guys have questions.
Are you guys ready for me at the podium? Okay. I'll just answer the question now. So
I think they.
Oh, you're gonna. Oh, go ahead, Jeff. Yeah.
I want to make sure the crowd's awake. Great. Thank you. It's nice to be here. Nice to see some familiar faces, some that I saw just recently. But most importantly, it's nice to see faces that I've never seen before, which, as I shared with Holly earlier today, makes me feel like we have all succeeded in our jobs of trying to build the hemp industry. I used to know most people in the room, and I'm glad that I don't today. Thank you to Jean for hosting this event. It is where the industry has grown from in Florida, and without organizations like Jean's and these events, we would not be where we are today. But there are challenges, and I hope that I can quickly go through them. And I hope that you also will see through my introduction of what I've done that all things are possible. Dream big, stay true to your course, absolutely take Holly's advice, verify. I come from the world of motorsports where I used to believe that it attracted kings, the common man, and every thief in between, which was a good proving ground for me to be in the hemp space, because it's the same thing. Money attracts all kinds. Be careful. So I'm going to quickly go through this. However, it's a little bit of a long presentation because I've got a lot of stuff to share with you. I am the chair of the National Hemp Association. We've become one of the largest hemp organizations on the planet. And although COVID has hit our membership, we certainly remain to be really focused on our space. We are based in Washington, D.C. We are one of the most trusted voices because we are an advocate. I come from the world of government. We listen to regulators. We hear what their concerns are and try to address them within the industry. We have a wonderful partnership with USDA and through that with all of the other agencies. One of the biggest problems that we have is that there has never been a federal whole-of-government approach to hemp. Although the Farm Bill 2014 and 2018 allowed for states and now the federal government to be involved in this space, I work every single day in trying to address issues as the Delta-8 issue. It comes about. Transportation, believe it or not, is now a big challenge for the fiber industry. There are companies in this industry that don't want to transport fiber from a processing facility across state lines because they think it's illegal. DOT does not have rules. We've asked them to issue guidance just this week. We did the same thing with the banking industry. Although hemp was federally legal, was removed from the Controlled Substances Act, banks would not touch it. They were not going to take the word of the USDA. They were not going to take the word of the USDA General Counsel, who issued an opinion. They wanted to hear from the agency that oversees them. That's Treasury. We need to do that over and over and over again. And as you learn about these issues, whether or not you're a member of the National Hemp Association or not, come to us. We will be more than happy to help you. We are really focusing now on the other 98% of this crop. I certainly am responsible in part, for CBD being introduced. And as you might know, I was the president of Canopy Growth, which started out as a small little company that really we went from pitching 3 individuals in a room, 2 humans and a rabbit, and that's how we started pitching for money. The company grew from nothing. We almost went bankrupt twice, grew it into having a valuation of about $20 billion. It was bought by Constellation Brands, and once they had control, they fired my partner, Bruce Linton, and they told me they weren't interested in industrial hemp, and that was my major focus, so I quit. Went from there. Bruce and I created a new organization called Collective Growth. It was a SPAC, a special purpose acquisition company, and a lot of people ask, well, what the heck is that? Used to be called a blank check company, which is even worse. But you can, under the SEC, you could create a public corporation. We had to put up millions of dollars in order to start the SPAC. And then we really were going to rely on a lot of people who had invested with us to invest in us. We launched this on March the 12th of 2020, the very day that the world started to lock down on COVID. And our trusted bankers said, well, we'll have to wait until the world comes back to life and we can do a roadshow in person. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. Let's do it on Zoom. Everybody's doing it on Zoom. And they said, Jeff, that's never been done. It's not going to happen. 7 hours worth of phone calls. People sitting at home, looking at bluer skies, hearing about supply chain issues, looking about sustainability, being home with their families. We were offered $242 million in 7 hours. We took $150 million to invest in this SPAC, and we had our absolute best intentions to buy a hemp company so that we could help build that supply chain, bring that experience and that IP from around the world to the United States. And none of the companies, we looked at 200 of them, qualified. We had to invest a minimum of 80% of the money we raised, so $120 million bucks. No one qualified for that. And here is a lesson to take home. If you are thinking that one day you might become a publicly traded company, and even as a good business practice, keep your auditing and your accounting separate. Your personal accountant should not be doing your business accounting. Keep them separate because you need to have, in order to become a publicly traded company, 2 years of trailing audits. It's expensive to do, but that's the only way that you can get to the public markets. And shareholders will absolutely, and investors would like to know from the get-go that you're thinking far in advance. So we had to pivot. Goldman Sachs, one of the big global investment groups, came to us and said, would we be interested in buying a LiDAR technology company? And I said, that's great. What the heck is a LiDAR technology company and what does it have to do with hemp? What we realized is that was a technology that's doing autonomous driving out of Israel. And I said I would agree to that on 2 factors. We had to have a minimum of 2 automotive companies come with us that are really focused on sustainability. So we were very fortunate to get both iVentures, which is the investment arm of BMW, and we all know that BMW is incorporating hemp into their cars, and Magna International. The Frank Stronach, actually, plant center at the University of Florida is named after the founder of Magna International. They are the largest Tier 1 automotive supplier in the world based in Canada. So they're really focused on sustainability. So together, we closed on Innoviz in a $1.4 billion transaction. So you're going to start seeing an announcement within the next few months of the 3rd largest automotive company in the world taking on LiDAR technology and Innoviz technology. So 3rd time's the charm. I haven't given up. I launched a few weeks ago Replant Hemp. It's a $500 million venture capital fund. It's exactly what our industry needs. I can't do anything but to help stand up companies that are doing well. There are lots of great entrepreneurs across this country that are building revenue-positive companies, but in order for them to scale, they need money. That is what Replant is doing. We're going to raise $500 million. We have Replant Impact Fund 1 that is out in the marketplace right now, raising $75 to $100 million, and I hope that by the end of the 3rd quarter of this year that we're going to start deploying those monies into the industry to stand it up. So we've got an incredible investment team. Clearbrook is a company worth $13 billion. They are really focused on ESG and sustainability, and we're looking at companies and players around the world to invest with us to rebuild the hemp industry here in the United States. But we will eventually start to invest around the world as we can. And again, we have really good relationships with family offices, and those family offices are key to us becoming successful. Despite the fact that the market has taken a downturn, there's a lot of money available in the market, and people have raised money and they have to deploy it. We will be one of those places they can deploy. So I'm also either a good thing or a bad thing responsible for the creation of both national and international organizations. Coalition for Access Now is where I started with Paige Figge, whose daughter Charlotte of Charlotte's Web fame was the impetus for me to get involved in this industry. I am the president, remain the president of the Pennsylvania Hemp Industry Council. Pennsylvania is home for me, and Pennsylvania is the epicenter for hemp historically in America. And you might not recognize that logo, but that was the first logo of for the establishment of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. Athletes for Care. I, as a former sports agent in the world of motorsports, knew that we should get athletes and let them organize themselves. That is what Athletes for Care is about. And more recently, we worked for 3 years in looking at trying to create an international marketplace and try to make sure that there were regulations across the board for the industry to grow. And so we worked to create this this Federation of International Hemp Organizations. Got off the ground about 3 weeks ago. I wasn't terribly happy with the direction it was going, so I resigned. And we at the National Hemp Association have started our own standing committee. Both U.S. Hemp Roundtable and FIHO have not come to realize that not everyone can afford a $5, $10, $25, $75,000 membership. We want to build an industry, and it's in my heart and soul that we do this at a way that will invite people and give them the opportunity to learn from the experiences that we have to offer. So let me just quickly go and let you know what's going on in the industry. I think it's important first that we need to build a campaign and educate everyone, regulators, but also those that are going to be voting. This is a video that we produced for Congress.
We stand at a crossroads. The demands of our modern world have taken a toll on the environment, pushing delicate ecologies to the brink of collapse and endangering the complex systems we've developed to meet our needs. Recent crises have starkly demonstrated how vulnerable these systems are. When the global supply chain is broken, consequences at home can be dramatic. What if there were a sustainable, domestically grown resource, one that could provide everything from food to medicine to industrial materials, auto parts, green concrete, bioplastics, paper, and more? There is. It's called hemp. Hemp won't get you high, but it looks a lot like its recreational relative. It was a staple crop in America for hundreds of years for ropes and sails, seed and oil, paper and textiles. In 1937, Popular Mechanics named hemp the first billion-dollar crop, referring to the plant as the standard fiber of the world. In 1944, there were 1 million acres grown for the war effort throughout the heartland. But political pressure caused the crop to be prohibited, stopping sustainable progress cold and paving the way for a century of fossil fuels and rampant deforestation. But hemp prohibition is over. And now we know that so much more can be made from this plant. Auto parts without fiberglass, paper without deforestation, biodegradable plastics that won't choke our oceans, a building material lighter and stronger than concrete without dangerous chemicals, ideal nutrition, a world of possibilities in medical science. A thriving agro-industrial complex based on hemp is not a dream. Europe's regional model is now a billion-dollar industry and growing fast. The American consumer is ready for hemp, ready for products and practices that don't destroy our environment. With the passage of the 2018 U.S. Farm Bill, this sustainable natural resource is fully legal, and the time to grow is now. This is a promise that will let American farmers and manufacturers prosper from a versatile crop that once flourished in this very soil. A cash crop that can serve food, fiber, construction, energy, plastics, and cannabinoid markets. As industry leaders break ground in the U.S. on commercial-scale processing facilities, American hemp is poised to disrupt virtually every non-renewable industry. Hemp, America's next natural resource.
So that is getting us a lot of traction because a lot of people's response is, we hadn't a clue. CBD has dominated the market. As I said earlier, I'm in part responsible for its success. But it's a double-edged sword. Most people in America think that hemp is CBD. It only represents 2% of the potential of the crop, so we need to focus on that other 98%. And I'll get into talking about what we're going to do to move that forward. Here are the realities of the growing pains. As I said, that most people have been growing for cannabinoid floral hemp. The market has plummeted because we had enough permits to grow cannabinoid hemp to give every single American 300 milligrams of cannabinoids a day. Well, there's about 2.5 to 3 million Americans who know anything about CBD. Many states have moved to ban smokable and Delta-8 products. As Holly said earlier, we have always been of the opinion that Delta-8 was legal. Where the challenge is, even out of the Ninth Circuit ruling, they agree with us. The language is there, Delta-8 is legal, but as we have said all the way along, the details are in the fine print of the bill. The Hemp Farming Act of 2018 did not change or amend the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, so at the end of the day, the FDA is the only source of giving us guidance as to whether or not Delta products should be on the shelves. And until such time as they regulate, it's up to states like Florida to do what's in the best interest of their constituents and their industry and allow those products to be available. So we still have a fight. We still have to make clarity. My biggest challenge is dealing with senators like Chuck Schumer, who want to advance hemp in all forms, versus Chuck Grassley, who says that it was never his intent to allow a gateway drug to be developed. We'll have to deal with that as we're moving forward because Grassley is already saying that I betrayed him. But I didn't even know anything about Delta-8 products when the Farm Bill was passed. Fiber and grain, absolutely. They're slow to develop because we need billions of dollars in infrastructure to make this industry grow. The federal government is not going to invest as they would normally invest in developing industries until such time as they go through the whole research phase to prove out that this industry is worthy. They're not going to invest taxpayer monies as they might have in solar and other things in the past until such time as they prove out that there is going to be an opportunity to sell this. So it's going to take the private sector, groups like I&D Hemp out of Montana, the first commercial scale decortication facility in the country. They will welcome all of you to come to visit them and to learn from them. They grew 15,000 acres. They invested $26 million of their own money to take a flax machine and convert it into hemp. but they decided they were going to do this, and they have the wherewithal to do it. They're very successful, and they absolutely invite everyone there. The Elliott family is just an amazing family. But based on the reports that we have done for the White House, we have seen that we're going to need about 500 IND hemp facilities to meet the demand. The acreage has fallen about 24%, and certainly the challenge has been that we are at that tipping point of converting from cannabinoids to fiber and grain. And I am seeing right now that the number of acres that are being applied for fiber and grain are increasing significantly. Here are the two reports that we talked about. The White House asked us first, because we kept saying that hemp could play a role in climate. They asked us to develop a report, and they gave us their 12 policy areas. We wrote the report, and we said we're going to need a little more time, and they said, yes, Jeff, we thought this was going to be difficult for you. And I said, no, it's not. It's just that we can address 8 of those 12 policy issues. And they're like, what? So this is the first report, and as a result of the response that we received from that, they asked us to do another report for them, which was how to build the sustainable industry. It's quite a detailed report. It's available to you in a summary form on our website at no charge. Our members can get the full report, but certainly what came out of it is the economic impact. And as I talked about earlier about needing 500 facilities, we worked with USDA and worked on a very simple assumption. Could we get 5% of farmers who are currently growing all other mainstream commodities to add hemp into one of their rotations? And everyone thought that that was a good approach. And if we are able to do that over the next 10 years, that will result in 10 to 12 million acres of hemp. But in order to process that, we will need about 524 of the IND hemp facilities. And those could be $5 to $10 to $20 million each. But the economic impact, which really has caught the attention of Washington, really lies in scenario 2 and 4. 4 is the one I'd like to talk about because it is the most really kind of revealing of the potential. If we are able to convert 5% of farmers to do that, create 63,000 direct jobs, 174 indirect, and we will add an annual impact, and this is only from processing. It's not from farmers, and it's not from end users. It's just from processing hemp into cortication of about $32 billion a year. That's real, that means something, and everyone agrees that this now is an important industry to look at. The total addressable market, which is what most people on Wall Street look at, for hemp is almost $15.5 trillion. So that is how big the industry is, and the areas where hemp can disrupt or complement things that are currently made out of fossil fuels. And certainly across the board, this is the opportunity for us. It's real, and as the industry is trying to meet the demands, and as governments are now looking at sustainability across the board, hemp is part of the solution. And one of the enviable good, better, and different positions that I'm in is that we are now seeing people around the world asking us to help them bring that industry to their nations. And we've got an event that we're moving forward around the United Nations this year, which will really help those nations in LATAM and the Caribbean really advance what they're doing in hemp. It also hemp addresses 17 of the United Nations ESG goals, but certainly, industry, innovation, infrastructure, responsible production and consumption, and climate action are the major issues. But as I have been known to say, I've said on this stage when I was here last in 2019, this is an industry that we absolutely have to get right because everyone, no matter where you come from, has to have the opportunity to participate in this space. And we have to do this correctly from the ground up. I cannot tell you how happy I am to see people that do not look like me in this audience. Nothing made me prouder than to stand on a stage just a few weeks ago in Atlanta at the biannual meeting of the historical black colleges and universities, because not only did I realize what it's like to be a minority in a room, But it has been my goal since my involvement that everyone should participate in this. So I'm so happy to see people of diversity being a participant in this space. We at the National Hemp Association recognize that, and it's not that I know my presentations, but the first thing we did was we created a committee on social equity. And it certainly has allowed me to learn what the challenges are so that we could make sure that those voices are heard and come along with us in our discussions in Washington. From that, there was a failure of one of the other hemp organizations across the country, and so we stood up and said that we would give those state organizations a home, an arm's length standing committee, so we created the state organization, so it's SCOHO, and that is where all of the state organizations, and I think we have 14 or 15, come together on a bi-monthly basis and discuss the issues. And then if it's a national issue, we at the National Hemp Association take it on and reverse. If we learn something at the national level that really is affecting the states, we come back to them. Last but not least, in response to my departure from FIHO, we have recently created a standing committee of international hemp organizations. Anyone can join this organization. We welcome them because it doesn't cost anything to join. We at the National Hemp Association have used our members' money to support these groups so that they can continue to operate and appear at events and help promote the industry. We've many other accomplishments that we have undertaken, things that we're quite proud of, but we're not stopping on our morals. We have certainly tried to address the FDA issues. We are the only group that has stood and sat with 40 FDA officials before the Farm Bill was passed. We know all of the challenges, and it's just not CBD. The FDA has complete authority over anything that goes on our bodies, that is eaten by animals that go in our bodies, or things that people want to present medical claims on. They have that authority. That's their job. We need to respect that, and we need to work with them. But we need to get them to approve grain for animal feed. It's a long, lengthy process, but we're certainly working with them. And as it relates to CBD, they have said, listen, we would love clinical trials. We know they're expensive. Jeff, you guys have already done stuff in Canada. We have already seen stuff that the industry has done. We can skip phase 1, phase 2. We just need to get down to doing the research on dosing and guidance. So bring it on. Give us presentations. We'll look at them. So don't think of them as our enemy. We just need to encourage them along. What we have said to them, it takes them 5 to 6 years to even look at any research that's presented to them. And a simple thank you very much is not good enough. They need to react, and we're going to ask Congress to force them to react within a certain period of time. Lack of research and standards, absolutely, it goes with the FDA. We need to create standards. We need to have that research in order to support what we say is possible and true. Lack of government understanding. We had lots of champions like Hawley and Axel Burnaby in New York who really took a hold of what the industry was looking for. I think that New York has done a little bit of a better job than Florida in creating a one-stop shop Office of Cannabis Management. And I think that that template is moving nicely through the regulatory groups that are working on it. And we'll see how well New York's model works for everybody, and then people will make a determination. But I like the fact that it's one-stop shopping because I hate making phone calls to 30 people to get the answer. And where we're going, we at the National Hemp Association have become very active in supporting federal legislation, infrastructure, and others. We're taking a role because we know that hemp can play a part of that. We are pushing the economic impact for its jobs, rural impact, recurring annual impact, and CapEx, because it's going to be really important. Education. We continue to educate the public. We do workshops through our website. We do conversations with people in industry. That's all available to our members. And certainly, we can't do our work without our membership. To the specific question about fiber and grain, we know that it needs to be separated. We know even USDA recognized it in their hemp report. They separated cannabinoid floral from fiber and grain. We are now moving forward with this separate piece of legislation. We hope that it will be passed this year that will exempt hemp grown specifically for fiber or grain from the rules that USDA has that really cover cannabinoid and floral. That will allow more farmers to participate. They will not have to fear about THC levels. They will not have to worry about putting the expense through of getting acre upon acre upon acre of being tested. But if we don't get that run through by August of this year, it will become part of the Farm Bill. And let me show you the video that we're presenting on this front.
This is industrial hemp, a diverse and unique crop that when grown using traditional farming practices and harvested for the grain and stock, the door of opportunity opens wide for the American farmer, rural communities, small businesses, and the environmentally conscious consumer. It's a plant with thousands of end uses, from sustainable building materials to highly nutritious food and feed ingredients to even durable plastic alternatives. Since the 2014 Farm Bill, cannabinoid production has established a perception and framework in the U.S. that many associate the word hemp with. Although harvested flower material has been incredibly helpful in opening up doors and educating consumers, it has also brought with it some unintended consequences to the other sectors of the industry, grain and fiber. That is why we are working today for a grain and fiber exemption. My name is Morgan Tweet, and I'm an advocate for industrial hemp. My family started a processing company here in Montana, and we have seen firsthand what large-scale industrial hemp production can look like. We work with traditional row crop farmers who use the same drill, the same combine, the same baler, and other necessary farm equipment that they use for other crops, like wheat, barley, corn, alfalfa. Industrial hemp cultivation focuses on the grain and the straw, and in most cases, if there is any residual flower material, it's destroyed in the combine, the baler, or left to decompose in the fields. When we look at the years of data collected all over the world where hemp was never prohibited, the regulating compound THC is not found in the grain or the stalk. We even see the DEA exempt these materials and products in their definition of marijuana. So, if the DEA isn't worried about these things, why is the USDA? As you can see in the visual examples of the different types of hemp production in the US, there is a clear distinction between cannabinoid hemp and grain and fiber hemp. We see much higher plant populations, both male and female plants, and almost jungle-like looking fields. Whether it is grown for grain or fiber, they both have substantially different looks and much different farming practices than any field grown for cannabinoids. Law enforcement, regulators, and even your nosy neighbor should know within moments of walking onto your field what the level of risk for THC is. When the 2018 Farm Bill took the industrial out of the industrial hemp definition, we lost a distinction between very different crops. Now, stifling state and federal regulations are hindering the growth of grain and fiber. The answer doesn't have to be complicated, and with reasonable plans and trained visual inspections, grain and fiber can look much more like traditional agriculture. If U.S. farmers and manufacturers are ever going to compete on the global hemp market, then we have got to remove the stumbling block for growers. Let's open up the door for farmers to learn how to cultivate this crop and not hinder them with unnecessary fees and sampling. If you agree, please join us in supporting language granting a grain and fiber exemption in the upcoming Farm Bill. Learn more at hempexemption.com.
So the opposing side of this is that as we ask for this exemption, the penalties will be severe. So if somebody wants to try to grow a tri-purpose crop to get fiber, grain, and cannabinoids, if you haven't ticked off what we hope will be a permit that says fiber and grain, and you're growing cannabinoids, the penalties will be severe. So we are at the very forefront saying, don't even try this. We're going to discourage people. And as I said, THC levels, we hope will not be limited, because at the end of the day, who cares if there's a THC level of 1% in a crop that's going to go in a house or a car or textiles. So it's an arbitrary number. I'm sorry to say it was a Canadian that came up with it. We're trying to figure out what was wrong with that person at the time, yeah, but we're certainly, working. Again, if we do not pass this, and we're looking for legislation right now, we have bipartisan support already. If we are not able to get this in legislation by recess in August, then it will absolutely become the language that's in the 2023 Farm Bill. National Hemp Association, please visit our website. Obviously, we can't do our work without members, but we're here to learn from all of you. I have to say, although I stand in front of you, the brilliance of our organization comes from Erica Stark, who is our executive director. She is at the forefront of all of the discussions, all of the phone calls, and all of the what ifs. She is available to you. That's what we do every single day. We're passionate about building this industry. And again, I remind you, this is a once-in-a-life opportunity for us to get absolutely right. Everyone needs to participate. So we need to build this industry with diversity. And please keep that in the forefront. And I thank you, Gene.
We got time for just a few questions. I'm going to push us into the break because we got started late. So, Adam?
None of that from that cat. No. Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Maybe this is something that just changed my life, and I don't hear it enough, but when I read about the ECS after being 20 years pro-cannabis, I thought, why didn't anybody ever tell me that? And then as I researched that, and you don't have a lot of real estate in your body, and you've got this entire system dedicated to this plant, when I hear you talking about the resistance with the FDA and whatnot, does that topic come up, and this discussion of facts and science and how that sort of encompassed our minds in 2020 and the rush to make things happen? Where does the ECS fall into the weight of the discussion, and does that kind of help carry through and advance us, or is it not as heavy as some of the other things?
Well, where do I begin on that one? Listen, they are all very well informed. When I went to meet with FDA and had those, I felt like I was in a character in The Wizard of Oz. We went through these huge double doors, and there were 40 people standing, waiting for us to arrive. And there was Erica and I coming in. And I'm like, wow, my army's coming, just give them a moment. Every single person at that room had a responsibility. Every single person, if you can imagine, there was a guy and a team that was responsible for additives. And I'm like, he introduced himself, and I'm like, what the heck is your role? He was there because he said, Jeff, just because hemp is approved doesn't mean that you can break it down, that you can take components of it and add it to something. That's what we do. And you just can't do that. We protect. Just because acetaminophen is legally approved by the FDA, you can't take components of it and add it into another product. That has to be approved. And it gave us a great appreciation. And I hate to say, because I'm here in Florida, but they had already received a number of products that they had already tested. And they brought them to me and said, take a look at these. And remember, the Farm Bill hadn't been passed, so they legally weren't allowed to be touching this stuff. So they gave me products, and there were products that were labeled that even I laughed at. There were products out there that said that they were USDA organic. Well, the federal government hadn't given any status to anything, and certainly not organic status. 15% cannabinoid, cures death. And all of these things, and every one of those people in this room, and half of them were lawyers, were saying this is the reality of the problem. And we know that it's out there. The product that had USDA logo on it that said 15% cannabinoid, traces of arsenic, traces of minerals, no cannabinoids whatsoever. They sold $4.5 million of that product. And of course, consumers know nothing about it. So, we have to accept that we've all worked hard to help build an industry, but there are going to be people that are going to take advantage of this, and there's not enough federal or state money available to help regulate individual companies. And so we need people to work on the honor system and be good stewards. So we as an industry need to create standards. Did that answer that?
Real quick, your video mentioned, it's disruptive resource. Which lobbying groups are causing the greatest barrier to entry and preventing at the federal level?
What climate groups?
Or lobbyist groups?
Actually, you know what? We're not finding that they are pushing back on us. One of the things, as an example, most people will have no idea, and it's one of the great things that I love about my job. Cement production is one of the largest contributors to CO2 on the planet. It contributes 8% to CO2. The projection of using cement over the next 25 years is going to increase 500-fold. The cement companies themselves know that they are going to be penalized by governments around the world, and either they come up with a solution. So I'm involved with a company called Black Buffalo 3D Printing that can print the vertical walls of a 2,000 square foot house. They currently use Portland cement, but they are now removing the polypropylene and putting hemp fiber in there. They're now working to advance, and actually it was launched here in Florida, in Orlando, at the International Building Association. They set up one of their 3D printers and built tiny houses. But they are eventually looking to remove the Portland and use hemp to be that replacement, provided it can become structural. So that's happening. So the cement industry all of a sudden realizes that they have millions of acres. If they plant hemp on that property, not only can they supply them, the manufacturers and their own customers with product, they get the carbon credits, they're able to create a food opportunity, they be able to also create additives for repairing roads and everything else from hemp. So we have a lot of people that are looking towards hemp as being part of the solution, not being groups that we work against. And listen, I mean, there are people in the medical industry and natural products industry that have their own views about the way that CBD and Delta-8 should be treated. It's one of the things that is part of doing business.
All right, if we can do this, because I can say we could have him up on the program all day long and ask questions. If we can, I'm going to go ahead and get us.
I have a couple pilots that are going to be really angry at me if I don't leave.
I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brian, and Brian with the state of Colorado, and he's going to tell us about what's going on in Colorado and lessons learned from other states. We've got two of those presentations, and then we got Jerry with Cornell University.
So, right?
Yep. Yep, and then we'll try to do a wrap up. We still have time left at the end for more Q&A. So, Brian?
Hey, thank you, Gene, and thanks for having me to Florida. Hi, everybody. I'm assuming I have about 30 minutes, maybe a little less, 20 minutes. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again for having me, everybody. Great talk, Holly and Jeff. And I'm really here today to talk about what's happened on our state and how what's happened nationally has affected us all. My name's Brian Koontz. I am the manager of the hemp program in Colorado. I've been with the department since 2008. In 2012, when Amendment 64 passed in Colorado, legalizing recreational marijuana and hemp and everything else, the face of the Department of Ag in our state changed a little bit. We didn't drive by cannabis grows and fields going like this anymore. They were treated similarly as they are to corn and wheat and fruit and all the other commodities we used to inspect and enforce on. So it's really changed my eyes a lot. And our, I came on in 2019 in my current position. I'm also joined here by Margaret Fodorero. She's in the fourth row there on the inside, waving her hand. She is our inspection and outreach coordinator, and is also responsible for most of our enforcement. We also have a third-party sampling coordinator and a records and registration coordinator on our team. So I was going to go quickly through, I know Jeff talked about some of this or showed some of this as video, kind of what we've dealt with in recent history as far as hemp's concerned. The Marijuana Tax Act was really largely, enacted to reduce the hemp industry. There was the timber industry was big then, and the DuPonts were big with, nylon textiles, and we had newspaper magnets that, depended on paper pulp from the timber industry. So that was something that really set hemp back. And of course, in 1970, when it was put on a Schedule 1, that really had a pretty much devastating effect on the industry. But things got better. They've gotten a lot better in the last 10 years or so. when our current governor, Senator Polis, he flew a hemp flag over the U.S. Capitol in 2013 when he was debating the DEA on the harmful effects of cannabis and what the proper penalties or why it was criminalized the way it is. In 2014, as we all know, the Farm Bill allowed states and tribes to establish research pilot programs allowing cultivation. We certainly started one in Colorado right away, and everybody in 2018 remembers. Is it okay to show a picture of him in this room? Down, okay, okay. I met him once at an airport in the mountains of Telluride over 20 years ago, and very personable guy. Nice enough fella. But anyway, he is the one who signed the 2018 Farm Bill, removing hemp from the Controlled Substances Act. And then, of course, why a lot of us are here now is, the interim final rule. Now, the final rule that was first published in October 31st of 2019, and that was kind of news to our eyes when we saw it. I had significant conversations prior to that coming out with the USDA prior to even when I was a manager. They were, prior to being the manager of the hemp program, I worked for field services, and I did a lot of the boots on the ground, organizing hemp sampling, sampling procedures. So the USDA was coming to us, and I'm sure other states, asking about, how long did it take to collect a sample? How do we collect samples? What's your process and all that? So in a way, I understood a lot of the rules that came out. They didn't follow some of the things we had advocated for. We had advocated for a longer period of time for collecting samples before harvest, 30 days versus 15. We'd advocated for 1% negligence threshold, which we'd always practiced. Those were just a couple things. And I know that some of those things are more that the USDA said they weren't as flexible on because there's another agency called the DEA that dictated a lot of those numbers and enforcement thresholds. As you might remember, or some folks might remember, there were 2 public comment periods. One began in 2019 and was extended through January of 2020, and then they opened it up for more comments in October. The USDA did. And so, we obviously, as a state, submitted comments. I know a lot of states and tribes and private industry and private citizens and associations submitted comments on it, similar to some of the, the concerns that I just mentioned, the negligent factor, the certification of labs by DEA, the sampling 100% of all crops, and the THC, of course, the THC threshold for illegal hemp were just a few. And then after those 2 comment periods, the final rule was published in March of 2021. And it was actually published in, it was 21. Oh, it was just 21. Mistake there. What that is. But anyway, last year in March, the final rule came out, was effective, and for us as a state, that actually meant that we had to have 2 rulemaking sessions. We weren't going to. I'll talk about that in a minute, but because of the timing of when the final rule came out and when our state plan was approved after that, there was a lot of rulemaking that was going on in Colorado, and I'm sure that affected other states too that already had hemp programs or pilot programs that were still operating under those. And of course, the continuing resolution and the final rule allowed states like Colorado, Kentucky, Oregon, Washington, I'm sure I'm leaving out a few, to continue with their 2014 pilot programs until January 1 of this year. So hemp here in Colorado, I had mentioned how things changed for the department when Amendment 64 had first began, or was first approved by Colorado voters, legalizing recreational marijuana. You know, we were one of the first states to launch a hemp pilot program, which includes a certified seed program. This is actually the first day on my job of my current position when Governor Polis signed the Colorado Hemp Act to align us with the 2018 Farm Bill. So I got thrown into the wolves right away, immediately, first day. CDA did submit a visionary plan in 2020. What I mean by visionary is it was more about what we were currently doing. The things I've already mentioned, you know, the 1% negligent threshold and more flexibility in sampling and remediation. That was a big thing that was advocated for, and I'm going to talk about how we came to some of the determining what the public wanted or what our industry needed in a minute. We also submitted a revised plan because they came back, they waited on that and they came back with comments, and then they asked for a revised plan. And so we submitted a revised plan in 2021. It only took them 6 weeks to approve it. So that was, I think we were on the same page at that point. Most of the revisions they had made at that point were fairly minor, or they'd asked us to make fairly minor. And of course, now here we are, 2018 Farm Bill, Colorado, all states are now operating under that, or they should be. And when we got our plan approved, we got a glowing endorsement from this gentleman, Willie Nelson. He's friends with a couple of our hemp growers, of course, and he couldn't actually come to Colorado because of his asthma, but he gave us a glowing endorsement, and we put his picture on the edge of a hemp field and had the governor announce our plan. So, you know, Willie's always been a proponent of really, from what I understand, all things cannabis, including hemp, and of course the farmer. But he's always been a proponent too of, as I think we are, and it's been talked about in this room already. Textiles, feed, grain, use of hemp. You know, that's something that Colorado's been dealing with with the decline of the CBD market over the last 3 years. You know, it's nice to see signs of things going on now and improving, because we sure know that CBD market's crashed, and you know it's not what it was in 2019. You know, I got the fortunate experience of visiting a processing facility a couple months ago, and they had a decorticator from the Ukraine that they got just 2 weeks before the war broke out. And it filled this room, and they ran it, and they threw some bales of hemp through it. It's a pretty impressive machine. And they're also doing the same thing in the south part of our state with another facility. Both of these facilities they're going to take a while to get up and going. They're contracting acreage right now. They're trying to secure farmers. They're trying to secure markets, you know, but that's taking a little while. It's not happening immediately. You know, we're hoping that things will get a little bit better on that side this year, and by next year, you know, at least we'll have 2, if not 3, fiber plants, you know, actively going. So we're just fingers crossed, you know, and it's good to hear that that's happening in Florida, and I'm hoping it's happening in different parts of the country too. So how do we get to where we got with our new navigating these regulations and trying to develop a regulatory blueprint? Well, we started with a giant stakeholder group, and that's called CHAMP, the Colorado Hemp Advancement and Management Initiative. And this started at the same time I started too. It was there's 8 working groups, so there's 2 rooms this size meeting 4 times a month of various stakeholders. It was designed to to keep Colorado or provide Colorado's expertise as a national leader in innovation, and to create cannabis policy, and education, research and development, and regulatory innovation. And it was really, a lot of it was really just develop a blueprint for the advancement of hemp, for a regulatory frameprint for us to use for our state plan, and also for the entire industry to use along the supply chain. There was, like I said, there was a lot of people on that. There was actually over 200 stakeholders in that, along with various agencies. I can show you kind of what the links of the supply chain are here, but we had, for the Department of Ag's piece of it, really the most important things to us were the R&D and seed, the cultivation, the testing, and the transportation. The R&D and seed had a lot of researchers, scientists, geneticists participating in that group. Cultivation had some of the same, along with farmers and agronomists, we also had testing, which of course include a lot of labs and other manufacturers, and then transportation, which was kind of an interesting one that involved a lot of law enforcement, local law enforcement, state law enforcement. It also, State Patrol, Colorado Bureau of Investigation. It was kind of fascinating to see their side of this whole thing, because we know what happens when you grow hemp and you throw it in a back of a box truck or on a flatbed, going down the road. Law enforcement and customs agents really don't, especially a few years ago, they had no idea. It was, we had one officer said, hey, if it looks like a duck and it smells like a duck, it's a duck. For over the last several years, I've dealt with phone calls from all our neighboring states, Wyoming, Kansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, and they're asking, hey, what is this? They say, we got some marijuana pulled over, but they say it's something called hemp, and then, I'd have to explain to them what their status was with the state of Colorado. There really is no a national or federal regulation on what has to go with hemp or how it's shipped, other than FIHCE, regulations for import-export of agricultural commodities. I think generally speaking, we haven't developed our rules ourselves, but we recommend, on our webpage, and we tell folks that, hey, get a certificate from its origin, where it was grown, its point of origin. Have a COA of that crop, that particular lot or crop that's being shipped. Have your FIHCE papers or your import-export certificates if they're required, and have some sort of shipping manifest, or a bill of lading saying what it is and how much it is. Most police officers I've talked to are pretty good with that. They figure if you're going to go through that kind of effort, you're probably not smuggling marijuana, but I can't speak for police officers in other states. I know it varies depending on what part of the country you're in. So out of the deliverables we had, probably the ones that stick out to me are the, in the R&D and seed side. We do maintain a certified seed program that's being transitioned to CSU currently. We did talk about cross-pollination. There was a recent bill that passed, and that I'll talk about in a minute. We talked about state plan alignment, of course, legal water supply, a center of excellence, which I guess would be something similar to a one-stop shop, for hemp questions. And then we talked about lab certifications and transportation protocols I was just discussing, and I don't really have time to get into everything else. However, if you're interested in what the CHAMP report is, it's on our website. It's pretty easy to get there. If you just go to colorado.gov/hemp, then you can find the links to all these things, and that includes what the report had on the entire supply chain for hemp. So the Colorado Center of Excellence was established last year through state legislation. It is a centralized location that provides resources to the hemp industry along the whole supply chain. The lead organizations on that are us, the CDA, and Colorado State University. It's a 5-year plan. It's currently in the stages of fund acquisition. Everything costs money to keep going forward. There is a steering committee for the Center of Excellence, but right now it's trying to be determined how that would be funded, with state funds, which we don't have right now to do that, or participation, grants, that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that continues to move forward. A lot of effort's been put into it, and I think it would be a beneficial thing. I know that a lot of people get frustrated now. They'll call us for certain things. They'll call the Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division for certain things. They'll call the Department of Health for certain things. And then they'll call CSU for certain things, and they're just going all around the place trying to get answers. As far as right now, we're undergoing a cross-pollination work group. That's still meeting several times a month, and that report's going to be due November 1st, but that's been interesting groups to work in. They're all public meetings you can access on our website, and they're all recorded, but it's, basically dealing with, in our state especially, having outdoor marijuana and hemp crops and the cross-pollination and the challenge that produces to folks with, with crops, feminized crops going to seed and marijuana crops being contaminated by hemp pollen and vice versa. So it's been pretty interesting. I'm excited to see what comes out of that. As far as the legislation just passed in the last couple of weeks, we did have to make a minor change because now that all crops have to, or nobody's exempt from a background check, and our research plan was approved in our state plan last year. We did need to expand the definition of the key participant to researchers and institutions of higher learning, to include lead researchers on those projects. And I know there's some talk about Delta 8 already. Colorado just passed State Bill 205 regarding intoxicating hemp and THC products, and that is something that is, it just happened, but there's a state task force that's going to be created. The lead agency on that would be the Department of Public Health and Environment. This gave the Department of Public Health and Environment authority to promulgate rules regarding intoxicating substances, including Delta 8 and Delta 10, to name a couple. And it'll include our agency, various other agencies, a lot of attorneys, and the hemp industry, particularly, retailers, labs, full spectrum hemp producers, et cetera. All right, so I'm going to try to finish up here with the implementation of our state plan. I don't have time to cover everything. I kind of wanted to cover some of the things that are bigger changes to us. Our research and demonstration registrations being unique, the performance-based sampling, certified samplers, authorized labs, and remediation and off-site storage. So, we wanted to offer our growers as much flexibility as possible. We believe strongly in supporting research and demonstration. So we expanded our definition of research and demonstration to include private research institutions, not just universities and institutions of higher learning. And really what they have to do is they have to provide us a URL to the website where they're the type of research or the fact that they do research is provided. A lot of people initially didn't want to do this because they thought that meant they had to actually provide their confidential proprietary research on a website, which is not the case. They do have to provide to us privately the scope and standard operating procedures for their research project and the disposal plan. So, as one of the conditions for doing this, you can't let your hemp go into the stream of commerce. That's why we're allowing this to happen. We're allowing less frequent testing or really random testing, as long as those folks are able to document their disposal plans and retain all their records for regular audit. We also wanted to include, certified people using certified seed, and now we have certified clones that have been certified by the Colorado Seed Growers Association. We wanted to include the provisions the final rule gave us, which were growing compliant hemp over a period of time. We wanted to provide provisions for cloners and people growing immature plants and greens, and of course for grain and other industrial purposes. We wanted to include them in performance-based sampling so they could be, they wouldn't have to be burdened by the same frequency of sampling as, commercial producers or going for cannabinoids would have to. So certified seed and clones, we do expect things like labels, evidence of on planting reports of what was planted, evidence of what they're going to continue to use over the period of years as far as using certified products, and do random sampling with those folks. As far as research, I really, beyond the scope and the SOP and the photos, we need to have the planting report, C-tag, THC results that correspond with those. As far as performance-based sampling, it is using the same, having compliant THC results. And when I say compliant, those are that for us, those are not from a private lab, but regulatory. They're tested by the department or a state-authorized lab, and that they have planting reports for those as well. The certified sampler program, that started with the expansion of our program a little over a year ago, and currently we have 15. I thought we'd have more by that than now. It's been kind of tricky, with the way the market's gone and the fewer number of growers spread throughout the state. 15 so far have covered. I imagine we'll have more come, the big season in August. But right now they're out actively inspecting indoor grows, I should say they don't do inspections; they actually just do sampling. And they have been trained largely virtually. They have completed, an agreement for conflict of interest, that they're not involved in hemp cultivation themselves, and that any information they have about hemp growers will be kept confidential. We do have coverage in all 64 of our counties, and we will still, with our own inspectors in our own lab, do sampling and testing for quality control. Testing, also in order to achieve 100% sampling, we have now 15 authorized state labs. I believe one of them is in Florida. I can't remember the name of it. I have to look at the list on our website. But most folks in Colorado would prefer not to. Somebody said Kaicha? Okay, that makes sense. We got Kaicha in Colorado too, so they just have a location in Florida. Okay, that makes sense. So anyway, those are regulated by the Department of Public Health and Environment. They conduct annual inspections of these labs that have been certified. We provide a list of those, and so it says CDPHE, so the hemp grower can know what lab can they use. We also provide a list of the certified samplers I was telling you about. So somebody can go on our website, register. When they register for hemp, they can get access to the list of our certified samplers, what counties they work in, and then also get a list of the labs. And in some cases, the certified or the authorized certified sampler will work for the lab or have a relationship with a particular lab. In some cases, the grower has to arrange all that. So we still have all conditionally approved laboratories, as there's still the requirement that after the end of this year, that all testing laboratories have to be DA registered. It'll be interesting to see what Bill Richmond and his team say when they come out to visit our lab in July, and we tell them we still haven't been registered with the DA after 2 years. So I don't know, maybe we'll find something out by then, but certainly we need to find something out by the end of the year. And then, you know, for as far as disposal and remediation, as I'd commented earlier, we did always advocate for remediation. We advocated for more remediation than we got, but we'll take what we can get. So, you know, we have already had folks that have remediated. You know, I believe the only method of remediation so far has been by blending the entire biomass, right, Margaret? And that's had mixed results. It's been successful, and it's been not successful. So, I mean, I guess the good news is it has been successful in some cases. So, you know, hopefully that'll provide more flexibility for growers, and you know, more to come on that one. And another issue we had, and this made me think, I thought about this a lot yesterday when we had a snowstorm and my flight was delayed by 4 hours getting out of Denver. You know, weather events happen when you have hemp out in the field, and it certainly happens to us in September where we get snowstorms, or folks cut down their hemp, they bale it up, or they have it in windrows, and then weather's coming and they can't let it sit in there, you know, and a lot of the farms we have in Colorado don't have, you know, they're not old tobacco farms. They don't have a lot of, you know, drying space, you know, close to the field or within the field. So we allowed the ability for growers in that case to move their hemp, of course, after it had been sampled, to another location prior to receiving their sampling results, because we all know, you know, especially when it gets busy, it can take more than 1 or 2 days to get your results back. And in our case, it takes 3 to 5, sometimes over a week, and you know, days, depending on what part of the state you are in and how fast the Postal Service moves. So I think that's what I had. I didn't leave a lot of time for questions, but I'd be certainly glad to take any.
We can entertain a couple. Here's one.
Yeah.
Oh, I have two. Hi, Jody James with Florida Cannabis Action Network. We say we cultivate policy so you guys can grow your business. I have 2 questions. Probably more, but I can find you later. The first one is, you mentioned that you were considering prohibiting Delta 8, 10, and 0, and some of these. You have legal cannabis in Colorado, and I'm wondering why you're taking the step to now consider prohibiting products made from hemp.
So I mean, the issue really is, you know, yes, the Department of Revenue, they have very strict regulations on the legal cultivation of marijuana, where it's created, where the products can be sold in dispensaries and that sort of thing. There still seems to be this loophole in the hemp industry of intoxicating products and them being available. And so they felt the need to address things other than Delta 9 was necessary by state statute. So that's what the task force is put in place is there to do. I know that I've been to trade shows in Colorado that have hemp edibles and things that have Delta 8, Delta 9 in them, you know, and things like that, which, yeah, to your point, you know, those should be sold in a dispensary. But there still is a need to address that in the hemp industries, because they're being used in creative ways as additives or.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
When I hear the word prohibited, it is almost always followed by jail.
Yeah.
So I just need. Now, do I understand you that these certified samplers, that could be a private company? Those aren't necessarily employees of the state. Those are people who are individuals who have an imprimatur from the state?
Yeah, it could be. So far, we've had retired school teachers doing it. Students doing it, you know, people, police officers that are semi-retired, you know, we've had, you know, people that just have time in their life to, you know, to take this time out, particularly in the harvest season, and go out and collect samples. And that's why we need, you know, the confidential agreement, you know, and that's why we need to make sure they don't have a conflict of interest.
And that speeds up the farmer to make sure that the farmer's getting sampled in the right windows.
Yes, yeah.
All right, let's do this. Adam, hang on. I got to get us back on time because we're starting to move forward. So thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Jerry, if you are online, Derek, we got him? Okay, Jerry, if you want to share your screen, we've got Jerry Cherney with Cornell University is going to give us a presentation on what's going on in the Northeast.
Is that working?
Yes, sir. We got you. You want to go? Looks like you're in. There you go. Except you're in presenter mode, Jerry.
I'm not on my screen, so I'm trying to figure out how to get out of it because my screen is fine. Yeah, it's still in presenter mode.
Go show. Go ahead and click on the.
I'm gonna. Okay, I'm going to my. How about that?
There you go. You got it.
Okay. I went to my laptop. Okay, so I've watched the talks this morning and had to start thinking about Monty Python, which kind of dates me. And now for something completely different. I'm going to explain what's going on in New York pretty much. Why me? For about 7 years, I was the pretty much only contact for hemp questions in New York State. I've reviewed national research proposals on industrial hemp. I gave plenary talks at the national conference, at the first Australian hemp conference. And I wrote a couple of articles, one with Ernie Small. Ernie has written books and many book chapters on cannabis. He is the guy who created the 0.3 THC limit for hemp. 20 years ago, I took this out of a book chapter of Ernie's, a quote, "Probably more so than any plant in living memory, hemp attracts people to attempt its cultivation without first acquiring a realistic appreciation of the possible pitfalls." I'm talking about New York State here, but this certainly was quite true. And this is coming from a guy who is not a detractor of cannabis. Over the last 50 years, Ernie's probably the greatest promoter of cannabis in North America. So I don't want to talk about anything about hemp seed or CBD, but I do want to say something about fiber. And that is there was a lot of fiber production in the past. The last 30 years or so, it's pretty much been stable with no sharp increases at this point. Most of it comes from China, where there's cheap labor and they don't really worry about the environment, so they can do whatever they want and they can make it fairly cheaply. Hemp fiber production is a whole lot like herbaceous biomass, and I have spent 10 years researching herbaceous biomass. There's harvest equipment, storage, transportation, processing, and economic issues that all have to be overcome in order to succeed with hemp fiber. Now, hemp is what I call a novel field crop, and there have been a lot of novel field crops over the years. They may benefit from government support, but that doesn't guarantee anything really. These are some of the crops that I would call novel field crops. Some of them had zero government support. Some of them, like herbaceous biomass, had hundreds of millions of dollars of support. None of these have really succeeded overwhelmingly to date. Novel field crops have to have a market, and they have to have economic yields. Now, I've heard talk about sustainability. It is a great thing to have, but it's really not required from field crops. And in regards to field crop sustainability, this is a quote I took out of a hemp book. Hemp has become the world's leading symbol of sustainable agriculture. From a field crop standpoint, I'm going to show you what goes on with sustainable. It's a polyculture, intercropping, side crop, perennial or at least a winter annual, low or no fertilizer nitrogen, low water requirement. Less sustainable, monoculture, row crop, annual, high fertilizer nitrogen, high water requirement. You can decide where hemp falls in between these two. But again, Ernie Small, who is a great promoter of cannabis, said the most valid claims for environmental friendliness of hemp relate to its limited need for agricultural pesticides. And in New York, we've had some fields that look like this. We've had some more fields that look like this. There are some insect and disease pests at this point. There's no federal labeled pesticides. And so we actually have some issues with pests and disease at this point. So back in 2016, Ernie and I came up with these scenarios, 3 scenarios. We said if there's 20 states, the only thing I'd change about this right now is change this to 40 states. You could have a large market expansion, demand expands, production increases, stabilizes, and you might have like 10 states left. Another option was a modest expansion, which would give you oversupply, production drops, stabilizes, and you might have a half a dozen states left in the business seriously. The third option was the market doesn't expand, massive oversupply, production crash, stabilize, and just maybe a couple states left in the works. So this is what we said in 2016. And these are really still the scenarios that can happen. Also in 2016, came up with a risk reward graph. And to show you the standards here, federal savings bond would be low risk, low reward. A high risk stock market, obviously high risk, and potential for high reward. And then there's a no-fly zone. You do not want to be in the low potential, high risk category if you can avoid it. So we put the grain or hemp seed or whatever you want to call it here with a low risk, moderate reward. CBD, more risk, more potential for reward. Fiber, to me, is always going to be flirting with that no-fly zone. It just has too many issues to deal with, and it's not a high value product. So this is how we showed it. Now to New York State. In early 2015, I was asked to talk to state legislators in Albany about hemp. I gave them a talk and I said, whatever you do, don't over promote hemp without a market. I was yelled at by a state representative for not being enthusiastic enough. They went ahead in later 2015 and started the industrial hemp pilot program. And they literally said, we're going to promote hemp because hemp has 25,000 products. In 2017, the state invested millions in hemp research grants and in hemp growing processing grants. So here's some examples of the processing. Great Eastern Hemp purchased Broome County property for a lot of money, gave up on it 8 months later and sold it. Southern Tier Hemp also planned on buying a large plant down in Southern New York. They eventually gave up and abandoned it. Canopy Growth, the huge conglomerate from Canada, still says they're going to set up a big operation in Kirkwood, New York, but they're switching to emphasis on marijuana. Canopy Growth bought a large farm in Cooperstown, New York. That's where the Baseball Hall of Fame is. They spent lots of money to renovate it. They contracted with farmers for hundreds of acres of hemp. They brought in a harvester from Europe. Apparently nobody knew how to operate it. The CBD market saturated that same year and they went bankrupt. Several companies went bankrupt in New York. So looking at the registered growers last year in New York, most of them were registered for CBD, a few for fiber grain, et cetera. I asked all the New York State growers and consultants for comments. I got few comments from the growers. All the consultants actually responded. In general, they said they were somewhat successful in growing, unsuccessful in marketing. Most of them apparently are still holding on to their crop, looking for some place to get rid of it. Their greatest obstacles were cultivation, curing for flower harvest, and overcoming New York State regulations, which are almost always onerous. One consultant from Northern New York basically said his clients had a dollar and a dream, but no idea how to do agronomy. So this is what the registered, over 6 years, the registered acres for indoor hemp were in New York State, and you can see sort of a pattern. We go to registered outdoor acres, you see the same pattern, from almost nothing to almost nothing. I went on the web to try to find out what others were doing. I found this total licensed hemp acreage for 2021, and I was a little surprised to see that New York had 25,000 to 35,000 acres for 2021. So these are the actual statistics from New York State Department of Ag and Markets. In 2021, they had 387 acres in New York. So I thought about this for a while and added up to 6 years, and lo and behold, 34,000 acres. So if we sort of delete that 2021 and say this is the total licensed hemp acreage since forever, then this map is probably accurate. Two things about the map. One, that New York indeed has had the most total hemp acreage since forever. And also, it's probably something to say, you know, be leery of everything that's on the web, I guess. Now I'm going to switch to a slide on marijuana, and you're saying why that in a hemp talk? It should be obvious eventually. The New York Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act was passed about a year ago. It had lots of intents to regulate and control, to generate significant new revenue, reduce illegal drug market, and racially disparate impact of existing cannabis laws, create new industries, protect the environment, improve the state's resiliency to climate change, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, increase employment and strengthen the New York ag sector. I didn't have that space for all the things that this law is going to do. I thought it might be easier just to say the only thing I couldn't find that it would do is cure cancer. Pretty much everything else was covered. But if you look at any law, you usually look to the top and you see what's important to them, and that's generate significant new revenue. So if we go back to this registered outdoor acres graph, in 2018, the New York Cannabis Growers and Processors Association was formed. In 2021, the New York marijuana law was passed. So here's what happened to the association membership. It took off after 2021. There wasn't much going on before that. So this Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act is 128 pages long. Thanks to word processors, you can assess it without having to read it all. It mentions marijuana 93 times. It mentions hemp 209 times. Yes, that's correct. The New York Marijuana Regulation Act mentions hemp a whole lot more than marijuana. So what's that all about? You may have heard the term stalking horse. And for those of you who haven't, that's a false pretext concealing someone's real intentions. So my question is, in New York State, did industrial hemp serve as a stalking horse for recreational marijuana? And if you go through the last few slides I showed, the answer almost has to be yes. So what should a producer do? This is an old slide. I didn't change it because there was nothing to change. Producers interested in hemp should identify buyers and a selling price before putting anything in the ground. And they should have a plan on exactly how the crop will be harvested and processed before they put anything in the ground. So to finish up here, hopefully not talking too fast, New York State to me is a cautionary tale. The state representative who yelled at me in 2015 eventually apologized to the people of New York for leading them astray. New York State lost millions in bankruptcies, and many New York hemp growers got screwed in the process. So I'm saying focus. If you want to grow hemp, that is great. But don't do it the way New York did it. Don't say there are 25,000 uses, so if I grow it, they will come. As a field agronomist, my job is to make life easier for field crop growers. I'm not a promoter or detractor of any field crops. So as an agronomist, I'm going to say make darn sure that you know the agronomics of hemp before you deal with it. And then make damn sure that you have a reliable market for your product before you plant, and not just a great big bag full of empty promises. That concludes what I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry. Why don't we go ahead and open it up to questions? I knew Adam wouldn't fail me.
Thank you for that presentation. I did see the data with the rise in interest and investment and then the sharp decline, and I was wondering if that might have also been related to the ability not to be able to market or online advertise those products, if those investment dollars came in seeking a market to then invest in further, but then came to realize you have all this product and then you can't advertise it online. Was that any portion of the decline, or what caused that sharp decline?
That is certainly a portion of decline, as in, well, for CBD example, where the market was just way oversaturated. I think part of the decline was the fact that the majority of people who wanted to produce hemp had no idea how to produce it. The second was that there really wasn't an established market for anything. For the fiber, it said CBD was oversaturated. And so the combination of that basically crashed. And of course, my feeling is that the state was really focusing on recreational marijuana to begin with. And this was one way to get there, and they've gotten there. So I would be surprised if New York has much of a hemp operation in the future.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Brian a question too from Colorado. Now that you've got a long span of history behind you and you've got adult choice and MJ and MMJ and hemp for health, I would imagine, I'm a little upset at the MMJ institutions that want you to try to maybe get off your prescriptions or something and come and get this medical marijuana, when I've seen most clients are happy with the hemp results. And I know it's revenue driven and there's a lot more in the MMJ side, and probably a large percent of folks going for their MMJ license are, getting it for recreation. But I've seen tremendous results from hemp, and I wonder, are you seeing anything in Colorado that shows hemp breaking out, not just in the, smaller health uses, but is it trending on its own and maybe competing with MMJ for the same type of benefits for those patients that aren't looking for the feeling associated with the medicine?
Right. That's a great question. Of course, the great majority of our growers, over 60% of them, are going for CBD, and they really advocate for the beneficial, the benefits of health-wise for CBD. And unfortunately, the fact of the matter is, yes, the marijuana industry is very deeply rooted in Colorado, and there's a lot of money in that. And so there is conflict between the hemp industry and the marijuana industry. There just is,
Sure.
Yeah. So, to your point, Yeah, I mean, I think plenty of people recognize the benefits of hemp without having, psychoactive effects. But yeah, who's to say? I mean, I'm still surprised to see the amount of hemp products going around that have THC in them and are being called hemp products. So the line's definitely been blurred in our state. Yeah.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
Actually, if I can make two comments, and Jerry, I don't know if it was your intent, but I think in your slide you said that Canopy, you said that Canopy went bankrupt. As the former president, one of their major shareholders, I'm sure the company is still in business and we didn't go bankrupt. But one of the issues why we're advocating for the White House to look at creating a one-stop shop is because of all of the issues where we're now starting to see overlap. In the New York example, the Office of Cannabis Management is that one-stop shopping trying to address cannabis and hemp. Let me remind everybody, this crop has been absent our landscape for 85 years, so there's not going to be an overnight success story in how to manage the return. But we're now starting to see the discussion, certainly in Pennsylvania, where the medical marijuana program is talking to the Department of Agriculture, wondering why the hemp growers aren't allowed to supply CBD to that industry. We think that that should be happening, and I think that as the industry is starting to evolve, that regulators, groups like Hawley's and Brian's and others, should start to have that discussion about where is this cannabis overlap and where can everybody work together.
Holly, you going to say something?
I just want to make one point, and I banter with my fellow regulators about this. The pure definition of hemp has Delta-9 in it.
True.
So it's a marketing ploy. I mean, it doesn't mean when they put Delta-9 on a product, does that automatically mean it has over 0.3? Not necessarily. So it's all semantics. And I've had several people while I was still in office call me all excited about that, and I said, well, let's look at the labeling. Now, are they getting creative with serving size and packaging? Yes, they most definitely are. So, but, be careful, read the detail.
Question here.
Okay, my name is Sydney. I am with Munsa Industries. I've just renewed my industrial hemp license here. We have 700 acres registered here in the state of Florida. So my point is, I am a minority. I am getting in the industrial hemp space for fiber. I'm also working with 3 other Latin America countries with their government to establish industrial hemp market there as well, using the standard that we have here in the state of Florida, since you're already licensed. Now, my question is, the focus is specifically on the fiber production. For instance, now we're having this aluminum and metal shortage, which is prices are increasing. The world is heading into a war. So we did it in World War II with Henry Ford, where everything was transferred from metal to hemp fiber. So I've been working on this for over a year. I was able to secure some patented hemp processing equipment from Canada. And we're able to process fibers tons per hour. Now, the point is not to just produce the fiber. For example, in the state of Florida, yes, we can produce fiber, we can produce all of that. And as we mentioned, if everyone is just producing and there's no market, then it's like washing your hand and wipe it on the floor. So my proposal is, I'm in talk with actually Tesla and Amazon. So we're proposing to, for instance, Tesla, they're getting their metal from Ukraine and other places that were sanctioned now. but how about we start producing fiber for the car industry, and we start setting up, for example, make the state of Florida an example, and we have, for example, with the National Hemp Association, create a cooperation of industrial farmers who are willing to produce that farmer, because 700 acres is nowhere near enough to produce the kind of fiber we would need. Not just for metal. I'm also happen to be in the real estate industry for 17 years. From construction to development. So now we want to also produce hempcrete for the construction industry. The hempcrete, you have a LEED Platinum certification for a home built with hempcrete. So we have the land, especially here in the state of Florida. We have all the necessary field, all the necessary knowledge and equipment to create that industry and make Florida the #1 hemp fiber producing. So my question was to Mr. Greg. You actually happened to be my inspiration. I modeled my company after Canopy Grove. I wanted to eventually get to that space. But my
Watch
question,
what you wish for.
No, so the fiber point is, now that I have secured all of that, I want, not only being a minority, in that space, dealing with that kind of, on an industrial level, I want to know how I can cooperate with other farmers or other industries to create a partnership so I can get financing to get this off the ground. It's difficult.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch hats and go from NHA to Replant Hemp. That's exactly what Replant Hemp is trying to do. And if you went to our website, you would see another video from us that talks about the potential of hemp and says, farmers want to grow hemp, and there is a huge demand for hemp, but how do we get there from here? We need to finance that supply chain, but you have to be really careful. I deal with many countries around the world. I deal with all the automotive companies, and they are looking for not only a sustainable solution, they're looking for anyone that's going to approach them to provide them with that, to have 2 years worth of supply to their exact standards in a facility, or they're never going to contract. And oh, by the way, it has to be cheaper than the plastics that they're using today. They're not going to do it. And I am not always in favor of government involvement in the private sector, but this is exactly the role that government needs to play. If the nation is really determined to become more sustainable, then we need to see regulations that are encouraging, as New York State has just done, encouraging departments of government first and foremost, and then giving incentives to the private sector to start to convert to using sustainable fibers. Not just hemp, but all sustainable fibers. So again, we have been absent our landscape for 85 years. It's not going to happen overnight. We know that the potential is there. Europe is a very fine example. I deal with many European automotive companies, BMW being one of them. They know, because the EU has mandated that the automotive industry has to reduce their carbon footprint by 8% starting in 2025. So they're now running quickly, and they're incredible companies like BComp. BComp out of Switzerland, they are doing everything they possibly can out of natural fibers, building boats and car parts and supplying the automotive industry and riding helmets and sports equipments and all of that, not doing it with hemp because there isn't a supply chain. So Europe has got a big hemp industry, bigger than what we have here, but they can't supply the companies with what they need. So that's why we've created this kind of global organization to try and make sure that everyone is kind of looking towards one thing. Lastly, we are picking 1 or 2 industries to focus on, and let's get a win there. And whether or not it's green construction or energy, those are the things that we think we can work on. And if you're not aware, Secretary Vilsack, we've encouraged both President Biden and Secretary Vilsack to utter the word hemp. Well, again, watch what you wish for. Secretary Vilsack got up at Lincoln University, talked about $1 billion worth of smart climate commodity grants, and mentioned specifically that hemp, because of researching it there, hemp had the potential to be a solution for green construction and avionic biofuels. And now we begin that process.
All right, out there, I know you want to ask a question.
Oh, you know what? Don't you love Susan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was on the slide.
Yeah. Oh, well. Yeah. So which website? NationalHempAssociation.org. There you go. So replanthemp.com.
Replanthemp.com. All right, I'm going to have a stop there. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, panelists. We're going to take a 20-minute break, and then we're going to come back because Holly's going to run a panel in a session on Delta 8 and Delta 10. So I know a lot of people in this room want to hear what's going on. So with that, we will end. Quick break. Thank you very much.
Day after day, I'm more confused. Yet I look for the light through the pouring rain. You know that's a game that I hate to lose.